And the first thing that we have, we need approval of our agenda. Is all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign? Wonderful. And first up, we have public comment. We only have one comment card, and there's only one section today. So, Mr. Jones, please go ahead to the microphone. You already know the rules. Do you need me to read the rules or tell you the rules? Are you good?
No, I'm all right.
All right.
I'll save you the time.
And then I will put on a quick timer really quick, and then we'll be good.
How y'all doing? I'm D. Jones, passionate entrepreneur and visionary. Today I got on my bike and came here. I'm looking for a car. I got the cash to get a car, just looking for a car. But I'm excited to let you guys know the cool work that I've been doing with the esports activations, our partnership. I actually got invited to speak to the United Nations in April. So after I do the esports activations with the school district and the Urban League, I'll be flying to New York to speak to the United Nations about economics. The president of the Social Economic Forum and all of that stuff from the United Nations invited me to speak there. So I'll definitely be putting in a good word for our school district. And obviously, it's 193 countries that's a part of the United Nations, and they have 17 goals. Is one thing I really care about is investing in the education. And so very excited to go to the United Nations and put our city on, our state and our school district, and basically push esports and across the district and across the globe one day. Also, I'm very excited to say that I'm going to be speaking at the African American Conference on Friday. So I know it's going to be some African American GRPS students there. I put together a nice presentation on using esports for social education, educating students on green energy and infrastructure and digital currency like cryptocurrencies, because that's a big thing. I actually learned that 60% of parents actually want their their kids to learn about cryptocurrency. And I am a vice president and a spokesperson for a cryptocurrency that just launched PFT, which is a play fuel token. There's a bunch of states across our globe. I mean, not across our the states, but countries across the globe that actually invest in the crypto because of the uncertainty of budget cuts, and can't really depend on our federal government. But there are other countries that have reserves and doing the due diligence. Some people we actually have a state representative that actually introduced some legislation, House Bill 4087, which allows our state government to invest 10% of our general fund in the Economic Stabilization Fund. And then he also introduced another bill that will back our cryptocurrency. If they do, they will have a coin that is backed by our gold reserves and our silver reserves. So I do have some tokens in crypto. And I'd said that eventually, once it grows, that I'm going to donate some to GRPS. So I do have some saved, and as it grows and things like that, I plan to donate because I want to be the leader for donating to the GRPS Foundation and not Doug and Maria DeVos. I want it to be D. Jones because I believe that my educational values align with a lot of people that's on this board, and I'm African American, and I'm just not liking how our federal government is cutting funding and doing things across our nation that's affecting the globe. So I'm going to stand up, I'm going to be thorough, I'm going to be authentic, but I'm definitely going to do everything I can to support our school district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. All righty. And then our items today, we have, I thought I stopped it, sorry. Okay. So we have several items before us that are action items. We have our purchasing agenda, budget amendment 1 for general fund, special revenue fund, debt retirement fund, and then we have some donations as well. So kind of the way that we'll do it, Ms. Cribbs will kind of go over all of these different budgets, and at the end of each section, she'll ask us about questions that we have, and then we will have to vote on them individually as well. So, all righty, Ms. Cribbs.
Okay, first up, we're going to start down through the purchasing agenda. So it's actually a shorter purchasing agenda this time, but we do still have a number of items. The first 2 items are adjustments to blanket orders that we set up last June. So over the course of the year, some things have changed. We've had to have additional grounds equipment repairs, so bringing an addition to that blanket order. Also for temperature controls, boiler and air handlers, HVAC equipment repairs, had some increased cost for those as well. Down under support materials, we have a grant, the Section 27B Future Proud Michigan Educator Grow Your Own Teacher Certification Grant. So we have an agreement with Davenport University that would pay for tuition and fees for employees to go back and become teachers. So that's an exciting one. And continuing to spend down our Section 97 security grant to add surveillance camera systems for 3 more of our buildings. And then, yep, need that little thing to go away. Moving forward on health clinics, we have health clinics at Innovation Central, Ottawa Hills, and Union High School. So we did receive another grant to do some renovation on those spaces for those health clinics. And a contract for the wellness provider for wellness coaching for employees with Opportunity Thrive. And then the last item under building and sites, with Innovation Central, as we were doing the renovations there, our money due to increased costs over the course of that bond project, we had to do additional construction type costs, and furniture was kind of pushed out of the budget because I don't know if several of you were not on the board, but we had the wall at Innovation Central in the auditorium, so that was a significant cost increase that was not anticipated at the beginning. So with part of that building and sites transfer that we transferred out of general fund last year, we're going back through to pick up some media center furniture. So with the rest of their redone building, their media center furniture is being updated as well. So if there's any questions on the purchasing agenda items, we do have several colleagues here too. If we
I don't have questions, but for future, can we get like a budget, like line items? Because looking at like a full, let me use an example, 75,000 for wellness provider. Maybe that's not a good example, but maybe the media, the auditorium, and you were talking about like the different things you needed to purchase. I was like, oh, can we get like a line item just so I can like wrap my brain around the big number?
I was gonna say, maybe as we start to walk through, like the overall budget to maybe some of that will start to make
great.
more sense.
Thank you.
And I know two of you are brand new to this, and the whole finance and our school finance is incredibly complicated and a lot of different pieces. So did have some conversation with Ms. Williams too about doing some additional training and what that might look like. So we can continue to support you and help you develop a better understanding of school finance and GRPS finance in general. So.
If there's no
I
questions.
just have a quick question on number 3. So the movement that we're taking towards, speaking to this, towards the health clinics, is this the last line item we'll be approving so that that's able to start, or what can we expect in terms of future approvals for the health clinics?
I'm gonna look to see Alex on the health clinics.
Hi, everyone.
See, Alex?
So let me ask you to expand a little bit on your question. Let me see if
Oh, I was
understand.
just noticing that this is, so last month we had some line items as well on the health clinic, so I didn't know if this was it, and then we're planning to start soon thereafter, or should there be more approvals before they start?
We're hoping that this is it.
Okay.
One thing that we are dealing with is that we are getting more money. We didn't know we suddenly had more money. So some of the scope of work has been changed because there are more funds available due to these grants. But these are all the clinics that we have, and we're not anticipating, we're not expecting any other changes other than just get the work done now.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you.
All righty. Is there a motion to approve the purchasing agenda?
A motion to approve?
Seconded.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign? All right, we will move that forward to our board. And next.
Okay, I'm gonna start down through general operating, but before I get into numbers for our budget amendment for general operating fund. I'm just going to talk through, and it's kind of to give some context to what we're going to talk through. So bear with me. I always make some notes as my talking points, so I'm going to kind of do a lot of reading, but I also know there's a lot of information, so I'm trying to go through it fairly quickly. But so the largest source of our revenue for our district is the foundation allowance, and that's the per pupil amount multiplied by the student FTE. So for 24-25, our sorry, I can't talk tonight. Per pupil amount is $9,608. It's the same amount as it was in 23-24. The student FTE count is determined through a calculation using 10% of the spring count of the preceding school year and 90% of the fall count of the current year. So it's student counts calendar year, not school year, and they usually refer to that as a blended student count. So foundation allowance is received through locally collected property taxes and state aid. So you get another kind of combination there. Since the early 2000s, our foundation allowance increases were typically less than 2% from year to year. There were years with reductions and or no increases. So it was not unusual to have a 0% increase like we did this year. During those years, our expenses continued to increase even though we did not have revenue increases sufficient to cover the additional costs. So that's kind of made this structural imbalance to our budget that we usually have to address every year. So in 21-22 through 23-24, the foundation allowance increases of 5 to 7% were an anomaly due to the federal COVID spending. The state also got that as well as we did. So that's just to bring it back to, so 24-25, we didn't get a foundation allowance increase. So the next largest source of our revenue is local, state, and federal grants. These grants are typically restricted for specific purposes with varying requirements and guidance for each grant. Most of these grants have a supplement, not supplant concept. That means we can only use these funds for supplemental purposes above the base level that the district must provide using unrestricted resources. In the last couple of years, the state's greatly increased the number of available state aid categorical grants. For 23-24, there were over 100 new categoricals. So they're specific purposes, and they may not align to our greatest needs. So they've also created a significant burden on the district to administer all of these programs. And as the state comes down from their federal COVID cliff, many of these categorical grants are not going to be sustainable. What we've asked is, our Kent County group of business officials has advocated for fewer categoricals and a larger foundation allowance increases that would allow individual districts to determine how to use those funds in the best way to meet the needs in their own district. But it's challenging because so much of our revenue we really don't have a lot of control over. So we usually focus on the expense side. As we're a service organization, the majority of our expenses, over 71%, are related to salaries and benefits. During the very lean years before COVID, there were several years with limited increases for salaries. There were years when staff did not move steps and or percentage increases were very small. Retirement's the next largest component of our benefit package. The rates are determined by the state and vary by which retirement plan each of employees is in. There are 8 different plans, and there are a number of plans that are no longer available to new employees. However, we still have a large number of employees on the older, more expensive plans. And then I just want to say, if you want to see how complicated it is, one of the back pages in our budget book has all of those in there. Health insurance is the next largest component for our benefits. For more than a decade, the district health insurance costs were capped under Public Act 152, which limited the district's contribution to either a hard cap amount prescribed by the state or 80% paid by the employer and 20% paid by the employee methodology. GRPS has been under the hard cap model, and currently the district's covering approximately 82 to 84% for employees. The initial hard cap rates for 24 2025 were 7,718 for single coverage, 16,161 for two-person coverage, and $21,049 for family coverage. During the lame duck legislative session, a bill was passed that would increase these rates by 7%, effective January 1st, 2025. There are other sections in the bill that would make the 80% a floor, not a ceiling. It also links the annual rate increase for the hard cap to an index that doesn't exist, or 3% as a minimum. So the closest index to what doesn't exist would show that we would have probably an increase of 10 to 11% in health insurance costs for next year. But this bill is one of the ones that has not been transmitted from the legislature to the governor for signature. So it's kind of in limbo and what's going to happen with it. But just wanted to get you it could have significant impact on our budget. Instructional non-salary costs include the items teaching supplies, curriculum software, other materials, substitutes, warranties for technology, dual enrollment costs, and tuition for our center programs and My School at Kent. Support non-salary items include utility costs, district insurance, repairs, custodial and maintenance supplies, professional learning costs, transportation, professional services, software, and translation services. So that's kind of like a very big picture overview of what you're going to see as we go through. So I'm going to go down to the first numbers page. Our general fund is composed of three components: general operating, grants, and athletics. In our original budget, we projected our general fund revenue to be about $260.7 million. This amendment reflects a projected decrease in revenue of about $800,000, bringing the new projected total to about $259.8 million. And I'll get to the details here in just a second. With our beginning fund balance, there's about $300 million available to appropriate. On the expenditure side, these are the categories that are required by the Michigan School Accounting Manual. We're projecting an increase to our expenditures of $4.5 million, bringing the estimated total expenditures to $276.2 million. That shows that our expenditures are greater than our revenue, and we're using a portion of the fund balance that we were able to build up with our COVID funding. And say, this is a memo, and it gets really microfine print, so I'm sorry, but there's a lot of
That's good.
detail. So going down through it, we've got just a few items. I'm going to start at the beginning, though, at the top. So it's a summary of our fund balance. So when we finished June 30 and the audit, we ended up with a $40 million. I have to look down at my paper because I can't read it on the screen. So $40,579,000. Our original adoption was a use of fund balance of just over $11 million, showing the proposed decrease in revenue and the increased expense has a net decrease of another $5 million, or use of fund balance, bringing our projected fund balance now down to $24 million, about just $24.2 million. So one thing I did share, this is a spreadsheet that our former CFO tracked fund balances. So I did leave a copy with the board, and just want to say, when we were in that session downstairs, I misspoke and said that it was going to drop down further than it is. So I just wanted to highlight, sorry, when I didn't have my papers in front of me, I misspoke. So just wanted to get the correct numbers in front of you.
But currently, we're at 14.95.
With this budget adjustment, it will drop to that, yes.
Okay.
Projected.
So currently, we're at 17.85.
That was the original adoption,
Yeah.
yeah. So as we go down through here, I'm not going to highlight every line, or we'll be here half the night. So I'm just going to hit some highlights, but I do show the different portions of our general operating. So I've got general operating, grants, and athletics shown separately. Investment income is one that I'm going to do. We are projecting an increase from our original estimate. In future years, this amount will likely be lower due to declining interest rates. And as we continue to go through our fund balance, our cash and investment balances are also decreasing. leaving less money to actually earn interest on. Taxable values continue to be strong in the city, so we're projecting an increase in property tax revenue. Enhancement millage is a countywide millage levied by the KISD and allocated to local school districts. The allocation is based on student counts. The next one I'm going to go down to is under state sources. So membership revenue was impacted by the lack of a foundation allowance increase. Our original budget used a $241 increase, which was the governor's proposal. The Senate's proposal was $302 per pupil increase, and the House was $217. So I used the one in the middle. So having no per pupil increase was about a $3.3 million hit to our budget. The other factor that negatively impacted our membership revenue is a decrease in pupil count. So we had budgeted for our enrollment to be approximately flat, but using that blended enrollment, we've had a decrease of 138 students. So audit process is still underway, so there still may be further adjustments for students that either came or left during the period between the fall count and the spring count, but that's the best projection I have right now. 51C is, we've got an increase of about 100,000 there. It's related to the special ed component, but it's also foundation allowance. So if you want to see foundation allowance impact, you've got to look up at line B for the property tax revenue, and then lines N and O for the state sources. One line item that, because our enrollment is declining, we're now eligible for the Section 29.7 categorical for enrollment stabilization. But as you see, it in no way makes up for losing those kids and having a full foundation allowance. So it's
Ms. Cripps, can you clarify quickly that this, when you talk about enrollment here, enrollment decline versus enrollment for our actual school enrollment. Can you clarify that?
That's what I was
'Cause
going to say, and this is one of them.
I know, but I'm just like,
my colleagues say, because enrollment can be, you've got to be very specific of what you're saying. You know, we have so many enrollment counts. Are you talking spring count? Are you talking fall count? Are you calling, projection? We're doing projections now for next year's counts, and then when I do my budget, I look at that blended count. So as you hear different things, it's not that we're trying to do different books or different counts and all that. It's just, depending on the purpose, you might be getting a different enrollment count because there are so many different counts taking place and how they get used and all of that. So, I mean, when I hear enrollment, I usually ask, is it fall count? Are we talking blended count? Because that's my world, but just want to be very specific about which enrollment count you're hearing. The next line down, that is that line number Q. There are 6 different MIPSers stated categoricals, and so this is a net of the effect of the enacted state changes from our original estimates. So one of the categoricals, which was 147C1, rate stabilization, there's a decrease in revenue, but they also changed the rate, so there is a decrease in our expense as well. There's a decrease in a MIPSers categorical for cost offset, 147A2. That's almost offset by a different MIPSers categorical, 147C2, a one-time deposit. So those two approximately netted to 0, but there's a new MIPSers categorical, 147A4, that was added in lieu of a foundation allowance increase. So it's kind of like, okay, they didn't give us a foundation allowance increase, they gave us this MIPSers categorical, but then the impact of decreasing the rate on the one so it's just kind of nets down to our MIPSers categoricals are about $2.6 million less. There's another one that we have not included at this point. It was 147G, that is to reimburse staff that made an election in 2012 to contribute 3% of their wages in order to receive health insurance when they retire. The healthcare fund at ORS became overfunded last year, So it's like, why continue to have employees, districts, and the state continue to make payments into a healthcare fund that's overfunded? So instead of at least just stopping the employee contribution, when they passed the state aid bill, they put in this weird reimbursement categorical. They finally sorted, and then it's another one that when they wrote the legislation, there's a technical problem with it, and that it's allocating out to districts based on last year's salary amounts. So last year's salary amounts that employees paid 3% on are not the same 3% that they're paying this year, but we're supposed to reimburse this year's contributions. So they've been working with MDEORS and legislation to get a technical fix. That still hasn't happened. So they haven't done the allocation. It just showed up on our state aids this month, like yesterday or today. So what we will, they're still pursuing that legislative change, but the amount that we're getting will likely change if and when they get that change, and then also the timing of when we receive those payments. But since we did get money in February, we're looking to start reimbursing employees, and it looks like we'll be able to fully reimburse for their payments and it doesn't start until October 1st, so any payments people have put in October 1st the first payment we'll do through January 31st, and that payroll, and we'll reimburse them out of the money that we just got in February. Likely because there's still uncertainty at the state level, we'll wait, see what happens at the state level, look to do another payment in June for whatever money we received at that point, and then likely we'll not do another one because we will still continue to receive payments through July and August. What I heard is if they get their technical fix, we won't get our last payment until November of next year. So it may be November when we do that final payment. So whatever we get in, we will reimburse employees as we can, but just kind of don't want to get out ahead of the money coming in from the state. MDE was oh, you'll get it. And I'm like, after what happened last year with state aid, we'll pay it when we get it. One last thing, I'm going to jump down for a second. We do have a decrease in the transfer in from food service for indirect. So overall, there's a projected decrease in our general operating revenue of the $6.6 million. Going to jump back up for grants. So generally, our budget for grant revenue will equal our budget for grant expense. For a number of our grants, the grant period is different from our fiscal year. So we budget for expected expense in our fiscal year. And so the amounts that you're seeing here won't necessarily equal the grant award. It's the change from what we originally projected to what we've got now. Many of our grants also allow for carryover of unexpended funds from one year to the next. So typically we don't budget for carryover in the original budget. We just need to close out our fiscal year and or the grant period to close so we know what carryover actually is, and we adjust those budget in Amendment 1. So these are the changes from our budget for these local, state, and federal grants. So it can be the result of the final allocation change, because our title grants, we typically are operating on final or preliminary allocations from the state until October or November, and they tell us what our final allocation is. Carryover, new grants, or changes in expected spending. So a couple that I do want to highlight down under state sources, and make sure I get the right, line W is a decrease of 1.3 million. So back when we were doing our original budget in May and June, we're working on our grant application, and we were including some Tier 2 supplemental curriculum materials software. When the state finally reviewed our application, those items were not approved. So we had to revise our grant application in July or August. I don't remember for sure when, but I know it was after the fiscal year. So these items are now funded with general operating funds. So that's one of the things you'll see as we get down into the expense side. Another item to highlight is the reduction of 31A revenue. So In our original budget, we'd planned on funding 29 teachers from Section 31A for class size reduction, as we've done for many, many years. In September, we learned that teachers of record could not be funded by Section 31A. So that meant the funding for those teachers couldn't be included under Section 31A. They did in their state aid put in a new categorical, but the requirements that they put on that were not really feasible for GRPS to use it for class size reduction any longer. So the reduction had to be shown for multiple years in a single classroom. And with the mobility of our students in a classroom, it's just not really feasible for us to show that one classroom at one building has a reduction for multiple years on being able to fund it that way. So that was another unexpected increase to our expense on general operating, and it's not that we're getting less 31A funds, but we're just gonna have to repurpose those to another allowable use. So now moving down to expense side. So in our original budget, we tried to estimate what our costs will be if all positions are filled. However, we still continue to have a large number of vacancies. So, but I do include an estimate for vacancies in our salaries and benefit budget, so it's not like, if I'm gonna have 40 custodians and I've got 30 vacancies, or bad numbers, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
I don't budget for all, because just knowing historically, we've had a challenge filling those. So, but you do see the salary and benefit adjustments include the MEPSR's rate reduction that I discussed earlier, as well as vacant positions. So with the vacant positions, the estimate for substitutes and instructional services, which primarily is the contracted special ed aides, that's not something we've had in the past. So we had to increase the budgets for those for this year. So students are getting better services because we're covering it using the outside agency. Cost estimates for instructional software, materials, and supplies are increasing in part due to that change in Section 23G funding that I just mentioned. The other large one there, line AY, center program tuition. Some of our special ed students attend the center programs that are operated by KSD for the county-wide. We're billed tuition based on the days the students are enrolled in the program. So KISD has now revised their estimate of the amount that will be billed for this year. Some of it's due to the additional revenue that they're receiving from property taxes, and they're also experiencing vacant positions, so their costs are less than originally projected. So it's kind of one of those, it's kind of an anomaly this year on their side as well, but we'll take the significant decrease in expense for us. General operating support services, the reasons for the salary and benefits are similar to the instructional programs. One thing to note, prior to this school year, special ed itinerants were dual employed with KISD because we could get additional funding from the state. Because that additional funding has evaporated, gone away. We've sunsetted that agreement, and now those itinerant staff are totally just GRPS staff, and their salaries and benefits are shown as salary and benefits rather than payments to other school districts. General operating other, there are adjustments for indirect between general operating and grants, and the transfer between general operating and athletics. But one thing that I do want to note, we did have to increase the transfer to food service to avoid a deficit in that fund. On the expense side, we typically don't go through all the detail, but give you the detail of the grants on instruction and support for all of those changes to that long list of all the grants that changed. Athletics, we did make some adjustments for salary and benefits and purchase services expense. So that's the big picture detail of all of the changes in Amendment 1. So there's a lot of individual line items going up and down. This is the net overall picture. on general operating. So I know I've been talking very quickly, and it's a lot of information, but if you've got questions, I'll try to answer.
Well, just to make sure I understand, so thinking about 31A revenue coming in, when it has the negative, almost 5 million. So did we receive that? And I think you said we now have to reallocate it because it couldn't be spent for the 29 classroom teachers?
Yep.
So we still received it?
Yep.
Okay, so it's in here as a negative, but it's just because it hasn't been
Yeah, the budget,
yet.
and we'll probably end up having to carry some of those funds over to next year.
Okay.
So we've kind of gone, what can we actually, it's like at the middle of the year, if we're gonna buy some type of support staff, behavior
Yeah.
specialist, an example, well, by the time we post a position, get it out there, get it filled, probably not going to spend as much as we would have if funding the 29 teachers that we would have started August with. So
Right.
looking at that and just saying, well, not that we're going to give money back to the state for 31A, we'll just look to spend it for next year.
Oh, so we're literally holding it off. So in
Well,
general.
whatever we can look to implement still this year, we will.
Okay.
But
And typically, so if there's a blank on the left side, we're at what we've budgeted. So, sorry, the left side meaning the first column, the general operations.
Okay.
So you're good. Sorry. So the first column means we're at the budget, $5 million. So when did we find out about that? I guess I'm wondering, 5 million seems like.
in
could have been-
31A.
Yeah, it could
I
have been
mean-
used in so many ways because 31A is so.
Yeah, it was September, and so as we worked through, what does this look like? What does the, because at first we were, well, it is they do have some allowances there for certain school districts, which we were one of them.
Yeah.
Could we make it work? And that's where we get into late October, and we're like, I don't think we can really make it work and still meet those requirements. So, and at that point too, looking at, it's like, I don't know, it was just one of those things where we need to not just react and, we're gonna buy, add a bunch more staff. We wanna be thoughtful about what kind of staff we may wanna be adding, what our needs in buildings, what does that look like? So there have been conversations about what that could look like, just haven't gotten to decisions yet.
Alrighty. If there are no more questions, is there a motion to approve, to send to the whole board? I want to clarify that. Budget Amendment 1 for the general fund.
Still have more questions. I'm sorry. I thought others might as well. So I was just trying to hold. Just wondering about we're looking at about $1.5 million for community services that we spent, I believe, above the budget. It's, on page 4. Community services, about $1.5 million that we spent, I believe, if I'm understanding this correctly, above what we had intended. So I'm just wondering,
So looking at the menu, the memo, so if I'm looking at BI, is that where it's about 1.9?
It's the
I-
side.
Oh, yeah, that's gonna be a combination.
Yeah,
The biggest part there
4.
is that grant-related adjustments to Title I, Title II, and Title IV and IDEA go under that community services. So those federal grants that come to us, we have to allocate a portion of those to private schools. And so that's where we had additional monies that we have to, and a lot of that is carryover
Yeah.
of the private schools. Didn't fully expend their allocations from last year, so we're bringing them on this year, therefore increasing
What we're going
what
to be
we're
spending
putting-
this coming
spending.
year.
in 24-25.
Okay.
We're working very
Currently.
hard with them to have them fully expend their funds in the year that they come.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But that's also something that's probably not widely known, that those federal grants require us to do an allocation of our grant money to the private schools, so.
Okay, and then a little over $1 million for school administration that we've overspent, I believe. Is there?
Well, I wouldn't say overspend at this point, it's just adjusting.
You're right, adjusted for. You're right. that's
Yeah,
better
so
language.
it's kind of
Thanks.
what we projected and versus, and let me go back up. And that's gonna be some of that salaries and benefits and where things happen to fall. And I'm looking, we adjusted downward about $1 million. A large part of that will be the retirement adjustment on that retirement rate.
That's it for me.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve Budget Amendment 1 for the general fund?
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign? All righty. And then we are going to go to Budget Amendment 1 for Special Revenue Fund. And then I just want to acknowledge it is 5:13.
That's what I was gonna say. I just looked at glass
This
at
is
the time.
going to go a little faster.
It will go a lot faster. Special revenue funds don't have as much detail.
Okay.
So this first summary page for revenue is summary of all of our special revenue funds, expenses likewise, and then here's the detail by fund of what the changes are. I'm going to quick jump to the memo where it gives you the detail, and you'll see most of the changes are actually on our food service fund. So with the declining fund balance in food service, our cash and investment balance is also declining, earning less investment income. There are adjustments to the food service on the local, state, and revenue side as well. And then we also updated those salary and benefit adjustments for food service, GRASP, and Houseman Field staff. See, much quicker than general.
It's helpful too. Yeah.
All righty. Questions? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to approve Budget Amendment 1 for Special Revenue Fund?
So moved.
Their support? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? All righty. Budget Amendment 1, Debt Retirement Fund.
And if you thought special revenue was quick, that's even quicker. So on our debt retirement funds, because we know our principal and interest payments up front, there's not typically an adjustment to those. But property taxes, we do adjust to what we now project property taxes will be for the month, and we've got a little adjustment there to investment income. And the state does have a state aid categorical to offset. When they made a change to one of the legislative items, it affected our personal property tax collections, so they do have a state aid categorical to offset that as well. So that is debt retirement fund. There's revenue expenses in there. You can have the detail by fund.
Any questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve Budget Amendment 1, Debt Retirement Fund?
Motion to approve.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? All righty. And we are on to donations from Renaissance Charitable Foundation.
And these are our most fun is usually when we get to donations. So we did have a couple of individuals that made us, gave a $4,000 charitable donation to use as needed. And so what we've done is include that into a 509 agency account. District-wide, as ongoing needs come up, we will use it for student-related items. Not quite sure what that is yet, but appreciate that these individuals, I mean, that's a large amount to donate, so definitely appreciate their donation.
All righty. Is there a motion to accept the donation from Renaissance Charitable Foundation?
I just have a quick question. You said for student-related items, when would we hear what that means?
I say
specifically?
typically what they'll, at this point in the year, one of the items that we use that agency account is like if there's a need for coats and hats and gloves, but as we're,
Okay.
I'm winding down on it may not get used for that at this point in the year, but if there's another need that comes up, in April and May, we know we have that account there. Also didn't want it to roll into like our general operating where it kind of just gets lost. So it's there as needs arise, whatever that may come.
I've seen hygiene products, mattresses, things like that that are hard to find other places.
Yeah.
Could you just repeat again what type of fund it is that a contribution like this would go into?
I say it's if you go back up to special revenue, it's the student agency accounts.
Okay.
And so those balances roll over from year to year
Yeah.
and are included there.
Do we have a general sense at any given time, like what is the general balance of that? I know that's kind of a vague question.
I was going to say, I don't know what that balance is.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And one of my staff could probably tell me, but I
No
don't
worries,
know what it is.
no worries.
So we are again looking for a motion to approve the Renaissance Charitable Foundation donation.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? All right, the GSRP Startup Grant found donation.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, it's not typical, it's a grant, but it was a significant one, just wanted to make the board aware of what it is. So in conjunction with KISD, we do have $225,000 in a startup grant. We typically have not supported our Montessori Children's House, which includes preschool children in it. As this grant became available, the ISD applied on our behalf to provide, $25,000 per classroom to help boost these preschool programs. Looking primarily to use it for outreach or instructional type materials at this point, but we did list the allowable uses there. And that these funds need to be fully expended by September 30th of 2025.
That's great.
Is there a motion to approve the GSRP Startup Grant donation?
So moved.
There's a-
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? And then lastly, we are going to the donation for Ottawa Hills High School Gauntlet.
Okay, this is, we received 2 generous donations, one from the Blackbaud Giving Fund and $6,000 from an anonymous private donor to fund the Ottawa Hills Gauntlet program that you may have remembered started in the fall. So it's primarily giving scholarships, but also funding some of the costs of the program. So it was an exciting new program, and we're glad that they found those 2 donors to help fund it.
Wonderful. Is there a motion to approve the Ottawa Hills School Gauntlet donation?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Alrighty, and then we will move quickly on to any reports and updates that you have with regards.
That's what I was gonna say, oops, I'm sorry, didn't
Go
mean
ahead.
to cut you off, but
that's
I'm also looking at the time, so I'm
Right.
trying to be conscious of that. So on our monthly financial statements, things are typically tracking as expected, but as the statements, they still show the original budget attachment. When we do our February statements, we will update that to this Budget Amendment 1, even though it won't go to the full board until in March. But since you've moved it forward, I'm gonna say, we're gonna adjust the budget in the February financial statement, so some more of those should start to line up a little bit better on the monthly financial statements, so.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And then we don't have any policy, so with that, and there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned. And then we'll see you in the